Welcome to Schmidt List, where we inspire and educate emerging leaders by bringing you conversations with the best experts and thought contributors in technology and design. Thank you for joining us today. Now let's listen in as your host, President at Foundry Kurt Schmidt, speaks with this episode's inspiring leaders.
Robin, how are you today? Good to see you.
Great to see you, Kurt. I love what you do. That is so amazing. And yes, the most powerful thing we can do in life is create a network. And I wish I'd known that. Matter of fact, that is the one thing, if you could tell your 20-year-old self back then what you know now, it would have been that much more.
Yeah, I give that advice a lot to younger folks, people with more hair and less gray than me very regularly. So Robin, tell me a little bit about your background, the work you do now. My understanding is you've dabbled a little bit in some government work in your past.
Just some. Yeah. So creating allies is something I've been doing in my entire life. And it kind of culminated in my last couple of years in the FBI because I recruited spies. Mm-hmm. So my life's arc started with chopping wood and cutting grass growing up, where I had to recruit allies to just get some school clothes. I had to recruit my neighbors. I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, and I did not have the super grades for it. It took me taking the SATs like 7 times just to get the base score just to get in. And sure. You don't let a guy that has to do that major in aerospace engineering. So I failed out of aerospace. I had to recruit allies, not even get kicked out of the academy. And so I've been forging and recruiting allies my entire life. And I went into the Marine Corps after I came in the FBI, signed to New York field office, and I got assigned to work Russians and Russian military intelligence. And my job was to recruit spies for the FBI. And I got our behavioral team way back when. And I then took over our behavioral team. I taught all this stuff at Quantico, all these advanced courses for counterintelligence. And since I retired in 2018, I have written 3 books. I kind of wrote them when I was in the FBI still, all around forging trust and really doing what we're talking about is creating great, healthy, strong networks, because I'm the hooky, spooky spy guy that I'm telling you, I do not use manipulation or subterfuge or deception. You don't create allies that way. You create a lot of enemies and skepticism. So there you go.
Right. And that's where I want to start is that skepticism part, because one of the things I've seen, especially since COVID, recent elections, all this, is that there is a very big divide between people. There seems to be a little less trust in general, right? We can't trust TikTok because it's Chinese, and we can't trust these people because they vote this way, and we can't trust these people because they have this lifestyle, and so on and so forth. So I truly believe that today, networking, in order to get yourself further along, is so important to build that trust with people who don't know who you are, versus sending a resume or just handing out a business card, or the typical things that maybe we did when we were a bit younger was kind of the norm, right? Mm-hmm. I drop off my resume and you review it, and maybe you give me an interview, and then we're good. We want to do business. I give you a business card and a flyer or a trifold brochure, right? Or a catalog, and then we're good. But today, it's really more and more about trust. Do you also feel like that's a truth, Robin?
100%. Trust is at a low because there's all this skepticism everywhere. Like we said, the media loves to sell distrust because it sells ad space, and
sure
people
does.
love to flock to it. I mean, one of the funniest thing, not funny in the sense of the content, but it's amazing to me. I do all these true crime shows, and I'm on the news a lot doing crime commentary because people are obsessed with things when they go sideways.
Yes.
Yes. They are. But the interesting thing you said there, and what has really changed, and a simple thing we can do in our lives to kind of reverse it. You're talking about, having the trifold things and our business cards and all the things we did to try to attract people to us to kind of sell our wares and say to people, look at me, look at me, look at me. Who cares? No one really cares that much about you. So one of my favorite quotes, I love it. It's not how you make people feel about you that matters. It's how you make them feel about themselves. Mm-hmm. And so you want to start healing distrust and forging relationships and allies. It's really pretty simple. This is actually the best time to live in of all. And here's why. Because the world looks so much more diverse than it's ever looked before, because it's out there. I mean, everyone has got everything going on. Like you said, we got politics, we got orientations, we got genders, we got it all. The cool thing is now is get close. Brene Brown talks about it in her books. If you don't understand someone, good. That's an opportunity to get close. Yeah. The bedrock of everything we do for success in creating allies, in networking, is non-judgmental curiosity. We were talking before the show, we were talking about one of our favorite authors, Walter Isaacson. He is one of the greatest biographers of modern time, no doubt, probably the best. And two of my favorite books that he wrote are Benjamin Franklin and Leonardo da Vinci, and also Einstein. And what really struck me in these books and these biographies was think about those names, those profound names. We have Einstein, Da Vinci, and Franklin, known world over. And why? Curiosity. Yeah. Each one of them had deep rooted curiosity for humanity. And I'm thinking about just Franklin. Franklin was a British national who became a revolutionary, who actually went back and negotiated with London, even though he was and then loved by the French. He just had this ability because he was so curious about about people. Same thing with Da Vinci, same thing with Einstein. This deep-rooted curiosity is the core to networking and making people feel valued and seen, and being present for them. Is if you hear something, you see something a little bit different than you, great. Dive deep, find out what it is.
Attracted. It's a signal to go, right? It's a green light. I give a talk on my book a lot, and I tell people there's sort of three ways of starting, and the number one piece of advice I say is get over yourself. Nice. That's the number one thing, because it's true, right? We're all busy, right? Everybody's busy. I'm so tired of everybody. We're all so busy. We're all busy, and you're busy. And I get pushback sometimes on networking and building those allies from people, because they're like, well, I have a family, I have kids, I have a job. I don't have time for these sorts of things, right? How do you, and I tell people, you do have time. You're just not prioritizing. Maybe you're watching too much of Robin on true crime shows, giving commentary, or something like that. But do you find that, in your experience, how have you been able to prioritize that networking and the building of the allies as part of what you do? Is it just because you built that curiosity, so it becomes almost like a hobby, or is it a discipline?
It's both. It's everything. There's never an absolute with any one thing. And you hit some key factors there. No time to build a network or allies. But it's a network and allies that save us time in the end. Think about it. If we all have these moments when we get this tunnel vision and we get focused on a project, and there's a roadblock in front of us, and we start pounding on that door, and the door is still closed, and we get even more narrow focused because we're emotionally hijacked, and we're in this tense state. And then all of a sudden, when we finally say, screw it, and you let go, and the answer was right over here, well, that answer came through an ally, came through someone in our network. And so if we had just let go at the beginning and not wasted all that time and just said to our network, folks, I'm trying to get from A to B. I have no idea. I'm wasting a lot of time getting to B. Does anyone else have any ideas how to get there? And all of a sudden, when you have a good, healthy relationship and people feel safe with you, they feel safe to innovate and throw things on that palette of art. That's when the beautiful answers come, is because you have allies and networks that can help you work that problem quicker like this. Right now, you're watching your kids while your wife is gone, and you are you're relying on allies and networking to help solve problems. So you have time to have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it comes back to, I used to think about, how do I solve those problems? Exactly what you just said, Robin, is like, I would dive into places like YouTube or books or things where it was very comfortable. But when I got really stuck, the only thing that could really help solve the problem was somebody to bounce it off of. And sometimes I knew the answer, but you just needed an account buddy, right? Mm-hmm. Or somebody would just give you their perspective and give you that advice. And that's super powerful, being able to have that. So you, Robin, have the experience, though, very different experience of not just trying to network and gain trust of peers, but from people who are distinctly different in terms of everything from culture, language, everything in background. Where do you even start with something like that, Robin? To your point, when you see something different and you want to engage with it, where do you even begin when you're trying to build those allies with people who are so different, or seemingly, I should say, surface-wise and bias-wise, different from you?
So first, I'm going to give a shout out to one of my new favorite people in the world, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who his recent book, Starry Messenger, and as my self-promo, he'll be on my show in 2 weeks.
Oh, awesome.
And he has this cosmic perspective, which when the further back you get from who we are, the more you see us as a very homogeneous species, and we really are. And the place I love to start to answer your question is what I call people's arcs. We all have this arc where we start, and the arc of our lives follows a pattern based on the experiences we had at an early age. And so we all have experiences at an early age. That's where we can bond. And so my general opening question for everyone I first meet is, what was the spark that kind of inspired us to be here today and what you're doing in life? Because that origin story is not going to be necessarily mine, but we have 3 things in life in common, all of us: death, birth, and some sort of trauma or significant event when we're younger that kind of set that spark that gave us our arc in life. And if you can be curious about that origin story and where it came from, that's a very common thing we all have. Children's a common thing. We either all were children ourselves at one point, we know children, or we have children. That's another common thing. Favorite family traditions and holidays growing up. They don't have to be the same, but that's what we have in common. So we have a lot of commonalities between people in our own species. And the most common thing we all have, the most basic of them all, is we want to feel safe. Yeah. Because if we feel safe, we can trust. And so if you can inspire someone through your actions and behaviors to feel safe with you by being transparent, by being open and willing to be vulnerable, that's the common ground we can all have. And that's how you form a network and create great allies. That's
amazing. I love that. I love that take. So let's talk about some of the other pushback that I might get, which is, well, I don't want to be transactional, or I don't want to have transactional relationships with folks. And one reason why I don't like networking is because people seem so transactional, Robin, and I don't want that. How would you respond to someone saying that to you if they were concerned about stepping outside that comfort zone and running into potentially transactional people, which is really bad, I guess?
So I'm with you. I'm not a transactional guy, but just because our paths might only intersect for a short period of time because of overlapping priorities, because literally our networks are only effective in the now, and the now is only a second, a microsecond. And then It depends on how long that now is. In other words, how many seconds, days, weeks, and months will our paths intersect with overlapping priorities. If it's like you and I on the podcast together, it's like this, it's a bump, poof. But if the bump goes like this, and we're not thinking transactional, we're thinking like, how can I ever be a resource for you again in the future? I take the email correspondence we have. I have massive amounts of folders in my Gmail and my Google account, that I categorize everything in. I have thank you cards behind me that I write out to everyone that comes on my show, so that way it might be transactional time-wise in the moment, but when you value the human being and all they've done with gratitude, and every now and then you touch base, a great friend of mine, Jordan Harbinger, he's got a 6-minute networking class that he does. And in that, it's really fantastic also because he says, go through your text messages, from a year ago, take the bottom 6, reach out, say, hey, what's on your mind this week? And just every now and then you touch base. And so I do the same thing, everyone in my life. And it's I'll tell you what, it sucks up a lot of time because it gets really fun. You start going down that list, you reach out for like 3 or 4 people to do a virtual 10 or 15-minute coffee, and you are booked for weeks and months.
Yep.
But these are great, healthy relationships that you can have these just touch points every once in a while. But when you engage someone in a good, healthy way, even if it's a time-constrained one like this where it's going to just bump and go out, you can come back to it anytime because you didn't approach it as a transaction. You approach it as a relationship.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I try to touch on in my book is that it is about the long term. It's not about it's the same advice you get when you're working on a resume. Is like the best time to work on your resume is when you don't need a job. The best time to be networking is when you don't need to ask your network for anything. And so I've tried to teach people about the idea and the value of cultivating your network for the long term, because that's what it really is. I always equivalent to the stock market. To your point, you might only get a 5 or 6% return, but it's a steady return. It's not something where you're trying to get some big fireworks when you all of a sudden find yourself in a layoff position, which a lot of people have this year. And all of a sudden they're scrambling to reinvigorate their networks. And they're struggling with that because, again, it's opportunistic. It's not building that trust over long term. Because I'm sure for you, Robin, when you're working, in the spy world, it can't be just, hey, I need some secrets from you. Let me know when you can get back to me on that. I'm sure that's not. I'm sure it'd be a much easier job if it could be where you could just be like, hey, you drop those things off. How have you found, in terms of the work that you've done in the past, but also the work you're doing today, the importance of building the long-term relationship, and why is that of value?
Well, 100%. So I'll relate the recruiting an intelligence officer / spy, whatever you want to call it, to business world. It's really exactly the same. So I had a product and I had a service to sell, and it was American patriotism to Russian spies. So that were, in my case, Russian military intelligence officers, SVR officers, old KGB folks, basically. And so I have a small potential client pool, and I have a service that no one wants to buy. So it's never just the client. I mean, think about this. If you actually have a product, a widget that you're trying to sell to someone, is it ever just about the widget? A lot of people sell a lot of different widgets that are all doing the same thing. It comes down to yourself. And then in order for me to get an audience and be able to put my widget in front of someone or my service in front of someone, it takes a network. So inside the FBI, I had to have good, healthy, strong relationships with my bosses and my bosses' bosses to give me authority to at least do an approach and initiation. Because here's the other challenge too in my world is they are trained to rebuff anyone who makes an attempt to initiate contact with them. In other words, if you walked up to a spy and I said, hi, I'm from the FBI, I'd like to have a relationship with you and I'd like to have your secrets. First of all, you get a diplomatic protest and you'll be, it's a big mess. You can't do that.
You'll be kicked out in no time.
Right. And so there's a lot of things you can't do. And so how do you inspire someone to come to you? It's your brand, your personal reputation, all those things. But also I have to have on board people that help me. I have to have the lookouts. I have to have the people in the motor pool that maintain my car. I have to have the finance people that can fund my operation. I have to have my bosses recruited that approve the operation. I have to have my coworkers and colleagues, because it's never one person. You might be the single point of success or failure, but you are the center of a massive network that's going to forge forward to do one simple thing. And this is why the people that understand networking like you do, it's not a carnival trick. It's not a transactional, mirage. This is an art form. And when you can start getting, as I call them, the reps in as early in life as you can, where it's mechanical starting. Here's the things I need to do in order to create a network. At some point, when you stop focusing on what you're doing, you'll focus more on what the other person is doing, what their needs are. And you can actually do the most important thing with any network, with anyone you're working with, is be present.
Yeah.
No agenda, no ask. You see them exactly as they're presenting themselves, and you see things that spike out of a word that might be a little more interesting. So you dive and figure out what that word means. A behavior over here that you can explore and be curious about. But you can only do that if you don't have an agenda. Because when you have an agenda, you're now going to have a confirmation bias on things you're looking for. And if you start looking for things, you're going to miss everything that they're saying. So it's just let go. And only an artist that has reps can do that. So start today and get to the mastery level, which requires rep. So the sooner you can let go of what you need to do, granted, you need to know what to do in order to get the reps in, then you can get that, like you have that mastery art form of here's how you just work with and you create this beautiful masterpiece of engagement, of a great conversation to give someone else.
Yeah, I love that, Robin, because it's one thing that I tell people about, because there's this term active listening. People talk about, there's books about it. There's all these things it really is about removing. It's as simple as trying to remove whatever agenda you might have, because like they say, you're waiting to talk. I'm listening, but I'm waiting to get my words, because you do want to get your ask across. You do want those things. But to your point, Robin, you're also going to miss so much opportunity that person will reveal to you, the ways that you can assist them, ways that you can build a relationship with them, a mutual relationship, right? Because another argument I get, Robin, with people is, well, I have enough friends, so I don't need to network. And I'm like, this is not about people you're building a network with to invite to your daughter's wedding. This is not, that's not what we're doing, because there's coworkers. And then there's like people that come to your daughter's wedding. And then in between, there's this big area of people that we interact with and that we get to meet and get the opportunity to possibly build relationships with over time, which can be mutually beneficial. Where, again, back to the old quote of a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that that's true? That you really have to kind of separate out, well, because that's what I think some people have a trouble with, is that they think, well, I'm building all these new friendships, and it's like, it's not the same as somebody, maybe you do, like you said, maybe you do, you go play racquetball with them, or pickleball or golf or something with these people, but it's not the same as like people that that's coming to your son's graduation.
Absolutely right. I have a huge network that grows every day, because especially when you're a podcaster, you meet new people and there's tendrils. But it's not like you're having like 50 million coffees now all the time. No, because what happens is your network becomes your problem solvers. Mm-hmm. And you become problem solvers for each other. If you hear someone in your network that has a pain point or a challenge, you then say, oh, I know someone over here. Let me put you in touch, and then if I have one, same thing. And the real key here is, in the real great networkers, the beautiful people in life that we want more of in our lives, is the ones that took the time to understand what is going on in your life, your pain points, your challenges, your motivations, and they proactively reach out for you when something pops into their life that can solve your problem and you never asked for it. Those are the gold people that you
want to hang on to those people.
I have one example is, I have a friend of mine. He's a retired CIA case officer, operations officer. And I hadn't seen him since 2002. We worked together in New York for a while. And back in like 2019, we'd both retired. He had a family health crisis, which was brutal and horrible. But we started working together again. We literally touched base on LinkedIn, and like a couple weeks later, we're having coffee again, as if no time passed whatsoever. Yeah. And what really struck me about him was, I was dumbfounded by what he did well in his career compared to mine. He was the greatest network I've ever seen in my life. I'll be at a meeting with him, I'll be at a talk with him or something, and someone brings up some abstract challenge or problem from some other part in the world, and he goes, oh, I know someone. Give me 1 second. Picks up a phone, calls like the president of a country, calls like the former prime minister of this. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, he's got like the old time Rolodex that must be like this thick.
Sure.
Because he knew the value of a network and creating relationships and holding on to them. And not because he's having coffee all the time with people, because when he met with you, it was all about you. In other words, there's a great quote by one of another favorite author of mine and friend of mine, Joshua Medcalf. He wrote the book Chop Wood, Carry Water, and another book, Pound the Stone. Another great guy is coming on my show. I've made great friends. I love this guy. Anyway, what he said, he had a great quote in his last book that I read, and it was, think about the person you wish would come through the door that you can't wait to see and can't wait to talk to, and then ask yourself, are you that person? That's how you network.
That's great. So It's a great quote. Yeah, again, back to my point about getting over yourself, right? But being the best version of yourself is a great way to start networking. It's not to just jump out and figure out, I encourage people, take stock of what value you bring to other people, and catalog it and understand it and see if there's ways to cultivate it and even grow it and make it even more value to individuals. And you and I have met them both. There's every once in a while we touch super connectors in our lifetime, like the person you just described, and it's amazing. I have such a reverence for those people because I try to pride myself as a good networker. But when you meet those certain people that, like you said, they're just a text message away from the Kevin Bacons of the world, right? That know everybody.
They're literally forces of nature.
Yeah,
watch that show.
It's amazing, right? And so to me, that's always like a goal. It's something I would love to be like one of those individuals, want to be able to have those sorts of connections. But to your point, it's really helping these other people. And my goal is that, again, as I'm helping these other people, I'm somewhat tethered to them. They're carrying me up the tide with them. As they are rising and finding opportunities that they're bringing. I do so much mentoring with students, and I've done it for 15 years. And what's great is that I have students that are working at companies that are now hiring my company from people that I mentored 10 years ago when they were just coming out of school. And now they've been in this job for 5 years, and they're like, hey, we need software development services and this and that. And I know this guy who runs an agency that's fantastic. And we get in the door in a lot of places. And not because when I was mentoring, I was thinking, yes, I'm going to get something out of this. But again, you plant seeds, some grow, right? Some grow big, tall trees that are strong. Others, I'm just glad I was there to help water and take care of it. You know what I mean? It's just it's very fulfilling.
The other critical thing with that too, that sometimes people miss because they're covetous of their time. They think they don't have the bandwidth to do this. It is actually the single greatest thing you can do for yourself is to serve others mentally. Mm-hmm. And matter of fact, during COVID, especially in the height of it and towards the end of it, even now, especially when people are kind of suffering a lot of mental trauma from it, and mental health issues from it. My best advice I gave anyone, I gave it to myself as well. I had to do this also. If you want to get out of your funk, go serve someone right now. You have to, because when you are serving someone, that our brain just rewards us for that engagement. It rewards us for the behavior. And that's why selfless leadership, servant leadership is so important, because it's all about helping someone achieve what it is they're meant to achieve. Help them walk their path. In other words, discover what their job is and what are you going to do to make their job easier for them, and discover what their pain point is. What are you going to do to help them overcome it? And especially when you do it without the ask, out of the blue. I mean, who doesn't feel great when you walk away from volunteering at something and you feel the energy? Yeah, it was draining. Yeah, you didn't want to do it, blah, 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 but you feel like $1 million because
you do.
One thing, what the reward you get is the service. And mostly, man, if you get one little iota of gratitude, it fuels you.
It does. It charges you, right? It's like a new battery being installed, because there's so many times, Robin, in those situations over the years, especially as I've gotten older, where I'm giving advice to people and I get done with the call and I'm mentoring people, I'm coaching people, and I get done with the call and I'm like, man, I should really take some of that advice. I should really. I just gave that advice. You know what? I'm going to actually do something with that, because that was a really good idea. I'm actually going to apply that to my life, because there is, like I said, get over yourself. There's sometimes when you step outside of yourself and your agenda and your things where you can really start to see yourself more clearly, and the areas of opportunity to improve, the areas of value that you have that you maybe didn't see before, because there's so many ways that people in your network value you that you could never understand. And they could probably never even necessarily put into words, right? So you've got to take the time to understand it yourself, because there's so much where people will tell you, oh, thank you, Robin. Thank you for everything you've done. And you still leave those conversations going, man, I don't feel good about myself, and I feel that with all the advice you're giving us, Robin, the active listening, the being able to be present in the conversation gives us that opportunity to really reflect on the value that we have as individuals.
Yeah, no doubt. The worst thing we can do for ourselves is be hard on ourselves, be our own worst critic. We are so brutal to ourselves, and we give ourselves this toxic shame, which is horrendous.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure we mention one more thing that really helps reverse this focus, that builds a network. And it's because it meant so much to me when I discovered this, because being this resilient guy growing up that had to chop wood to heat the house, my parents never owned a home, and had to go to work at 9 years old to just buy school clothes to fit in so I wasn't bullied even more. And so it makes you very self-reliant, grit, resilience, which are great traits and things to have the tenacity you need in life to be successful. But at the same time, it makes you very focused inwardly. Look at me, look at me, look at me. But to be of service to network, it has to be about others. And so there's 4 things I call my 4 keys of communication. If you can incorporate any one of these 4 things, maybe cascade a few into everything you say, do, write, Zoom calls, text messages, you name it, it shifts the focus from yourself to others. And these are very simple. Seek the thoughts and opinions of others instead of sharing your own. 2, speak in terms of the challenges, priorities, and pain points of others instead of your own. 3, and we talked about this a lot already, validate them without judgment. In other words, be curious to discover who they are. And 4, empower them with choices. If you do one of those 4 things and everything you say, do, and you're congruent with your words and your actions so you don't come across as creepy, that's organic and sincere, then you are shifting the focus from yourself to others. Their brain rewards them because you are being present. You see them and they just say, this person is good for me in my life. They make me feel safe. I have trust. And thereby, that's the easiest thing to network.
Oh, that's amazing. I love all those points that you made because, again, it's not as difficult as people might try to make it out to be.
Right.
It's not that difficult, and the rewards, it can feel like winning the lottery sometimes, because again, you're and like a warm blanket because you're covered. You have people you can reach out to ask questions, right? I always ask in my talks, like, how many people have ever asked somebody to help them move, right? It's like the worst thing you could ask somebody to do. And but the people who show up, man, you better hold on to those people.
Right. No doubt.
Because they're gonna be there for you. I remember we have some friends. Our 6-year-old, he was born 4 weeks early, and it was a total surprise. And we had some friends come over to like watch our animals. Well, because we were in the hospital, we hadn't had a chance to actually like set things up, right, to go to the the delivery, and everything was fine. We came back home, and I remember walking in, and there was one of our friends folding my underwear, like just helping clean up. I'm like, who does this? Who does this? Like they're doing our laundry. And we didn't ask for any of this sort of thing. And the thing is I go back to, where did I meet these individuals? Well, these were people I worked with at a previous job, and we maintained and built that network and friendship. We came from very different backgrounds. She was from Venice, and I mean California, and he was from Maine, and they met somehow. I don't remember how that happened, but and then here they were in Minnesota. A little while later, folding unmentionables for us. It was just amazing.
But you had a lot in common. You're Homo sapien. There you go.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So with that, let's say the last question I kind of want to ask you is about upgrading your network, right? So we have our peers and we have these other folks. There's a lot of times where people ask me about, how do I I want to network with people in, like my boss, but I want to work with people like my great grand boss. I want to network with people of influence, and how do I meet those people? What do I say to them? Because I'm intimidated by them, Robin. I don't have the schooling or the experience that they do. And so I'm intimidated to go up and talk to them. What would be your advice to someone that was trying to elevate their network to different sorts of groups.
You said it already once, and that is mentor. Ask. It's crazy what you get when you ask. And if you, I know, but the first thing that popped in my mind was, all right, solve a pain point in their life that no one else can solve. So yes, that's definitely one. But one of the most fail-safe ways I've seen people that are bold, that just say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'd love to learn. I discovered you are the person that might be able to give it to me. Do you have a couple minutes just to share your thoughts? I would really benefit from it, and I'd love to be able to pass it on to someone else. What advice do you have for me? In other words, seek their thoughts and opinions, talk in terms of their priorities, validate them, and give them choices. And how to give them choices. And if you don't have time for me, I completely understand. Might you refer me to someone else of your stature with your experience that I could go to and kind of help me forge my path forward so I can be like you when I grow up?
Yeah.
That's a hard no. I mean, I generally give a big virtual hug to people that reach out for me, because I'll get these college students out of the blue. Everyone, and you'd think there'd be more that'll reach out and say, hey, Robin, read your book, or saw you on this podcast, or came across you. You probably won't respond to this, but could I ask you a question? I'm like, sure. Yeah, and they're like, what?
Right. Yeah. Like my dad always said, you get 100% of what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
And to your point, these individuals are not beyond you can speak with these individuals, even though they seem like they're big, important people. They're just people too, right?
It might take you some asks to kind of weave around there from degrees of separation. Go to your network and say, does anyone know anyone who has a connection with so-and-so or so-and-so in this position? Remember, it might not just be about, and this is where you have to manage expectations. Think about the individual that you want to speak to. Then think about, why do you want to speak to them? What is you're trying to garner from them and learn from them? So you identify the ideal biography or resume of someone you want to talk to, so you can shoot for that individual, but you can also then shoot for some of that resume, so it doesn't look like, in other words, the individual that you're approaching doesn't feel like they're being stalked, that you actually did your homework. I'm looking for this baseline information that you have based on your background. And so that way you can still be referred. And also when you go to your network and say, I'm looking for someone with this background, I'm thinking I want this person. Does anyone else have any other ideas? Again, that's where we solve problems.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Start, think of it as a goal, right? Not necessarily something to be actualized, right? Mm-hmm. But something to aim for, right? And to find your way. You find your way to it. And then I love that too, because one of the smartest things that a lot of my mentees or people that I end up coaching do is they always ask me, who else should I talk to? And it's so smart, because that starts to spread their network out, because I'm always like, oh, well, you're interested in, starting your own business in this sector. I actually know a guy who's a CEO that does this thing. I should introduce you. And so again, having to be able to, because I've sat down so many times with Robin, like, I want to take you to lunch. And I'm like, great. And 45 minutes in of conversing, I'm like, so what do you want? We've been here for 45 minutes. What do you want? Do you do? And they're like, oh, well, I didn't want to be so forward. I'm like, no, actually being a little bit more forward would be great. Because then I could know if I should help you or not.
Right. What's your ask, man?
Yeah, just be upfront and honest, because back to already at the very beginning of our conversation, I talked about trust. If when somebody, a stranger, if somebody comes up to you and says, I am looking for this thing, you already can set your mind at a bit more ease, because you can immediately say, this is something I'm interested in. This is something I'm not interested in. This is something I can help with. This is something I cannot help with. And you can immediately switch gears into which sort of response you can give this person without first having to do some sort of defensive dance around, so what are you doing? What are you selling? Well, I'm not selling anything. Oh, okay. Well, what do you want? No.
And that's the key right there, is don't try to come up with some crafty pretext or
Don't try to be clever.
No, because it's so transparent. Just be you. Be you, be transparent, be vulnerable, seek a thought and opinion, look for a sympathy or assistance theme. It's like, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z in my life. I'm looking to improve in this area. I've been following you a long time. Your content's wonderful. Maybe quote them back to themselves. Tell them what you've done. Like with Joshua Medcalf, he gave he set the bar. I read Chop Wood, Carry Water. I reached out to him out of the blue, said, I'd love to have a chat. Love to have you on the show. I think your content's wonderful. He goes, I'd love to, Robin. You have to read 5 of my books before I do. I read 5 more books and got a lot more context. And I said, all right, let's go. And he's like, all right, let's go. But now I had even more context. And it wasn't a no. It was like, hey, here's a bar for you. It was a good one. I loved it.
I love that too. I've done that. I had somebody a couple of years ago say, I'll come on one of your shows. And I remember something Gary Vaynerchuk said. And I said, well, I'll come on when you have 10 episodes, I'll come on the 10th one. Don't ask me to come on until you've shown that you're going to put some effort in.
And I think it's important for people to know too, if you're going to shoot for some bigger things like that, always realize in everything you do in life, you can't go from 0 to 100. You generally go from 0 to like 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5 miles an hour. And as you start getting reps in and the network starts growing, you start sensitizing the universe towards what it is you're trying to achieve, and you treat people well, and you have good, healthy relationships, and you serve their pain points and needs, your reputation will help you spread that so that if you do have that opportunity and someone does do an intro or willing to do an intro, they're only going to be willing to do an intro if they feel safe in doing a transfer of trust. And so those are all things you have to do along the way in order to be able to do that.
I love it. Robin, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to learn from you, and thank you for your service to the country. And with that, if I want to get in touch with you, Robin, if I want to listen to your show, if I want to learn more about what Robin does, where should I go? Where are you most active? Where can I find out more info?
So the first thing you have to do is like, subscribe, and share with all your friends the Schmidt List. Kurt puts a lot of time and energy in putting the show together, reaching out for guests, editing. The whole process takes a lot. So show the love. He puts a lot into this. So first him, then me. Go to peopleformula.com, all one word, peopleformula.com. I have my show. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, blah, blah. But peopleformula.com, all that. But start out with Kurt. He puts a lot of time and effort in. So thanks, Kurt.
Great. Well, I appreciate that, Robin. And again, if folks out there want to get in touch with Robin, he's a very communicative person. So don't hesitate to reach out and check out with him. But check out his show. It's really fun. Robin has a great presence about him, and the way that he talks about the work with folks is just a lot of fun. So again, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you even more, Kurt. Thank you.
We hope you join us for more conversations in the future with leading experts in technology and design. Please contact us at schmidt-list.com and foundrymakes.com for more information.